differentiation is stronger than competition. So what makes you different than that shop down the street? And then what's stronger than differentiation? Impact. And that message could simply be, just picking up the phone and asking, like you said, for feedback, or asking for the reply. When you're saying all these things, it sounds like to me, and I'm not big on labels, but it sounds like low-hanging fruit. Hey everybody, it's Trevor Nelson with a friendly reminder to make sure that you subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. We really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks so much. But we just mentioned, like, I reached out to you. I saw you on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. And so, yeah, for everybody listening, Kristi Scott's with us, and you can obviously find her very, very easily on LinkedIn. But yeah, I was really intrigued, and I have been for a very long time. And we were just talking off air about it. Just nonprofits understanding the power of, their donor base and contact information, and like how they can use different methodologies. In this case, email marketing, to tell their story, to share their impact. I'm going to just riff on a few things I want you to add to it. Just recurring donations, all these different lovely opportunities. And this is your world. So
yes. Yeah,
welcome.
I love it.
I know. Yeah, I can tell that you do, because you made it your profession. So yeah, hey, Kristi, thanks so much for coming, and just talk to us about what you're doing with nonprofits and email marketing. And I want to learn. I'm here as a student. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm really excited. Well, hello, listeners. I'm Kristi Scott. I'm an email fundraising consultant. I work with small nonprofits on their email fundraising campaigns, as well as email list building and email marketing strategy. I worked in-house in fundraising for a long time, and I noticed that a lot of us were underutilizing email. We get very, busy, stressed in small nonprofits, and I've only ever worked at small nonprofits. I think whenever we're getting stressed out, we can look for the shiny new object. And I noticed that folks weren't really using their lists the best way possible. And when I decided to go into consulting and working with nonprofits on this specifically, I was shocked at just some of the practices that I was seeing, and just saw there was a real need for it, because in my brain there were things that were obvious, and I studied marketing and I got my MBA in marketing, and I did sales for a time even. So I even more so learned about different nonprofits. I was selling to nonprofits, and so I learned all these things that were going on internally, where they weren't fully using their lists, and they weren't segmenting their lists. They weren't asking their list questions. They were kind of guessing what donors wanted. And I saw this opportunity to help, especially those small shops, because email is so affordable. And there's no algorithm on email marketing, right? There's deliverability, and that's something we could talk about. But
Yeah,
that most people who subscribe to your list will at least see your subject line and ideally open it. But with LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, you don't control that. And so I'm really passionate about teaching nonprofits how to use their list and get more folks on their list who are committed to their mission, and using it for storytelling. One thing, I did a workshop earlier this year on new donor welcome sequences for that very reason, because I found a lot of folks didn't even have one. Someone they send a nice thank you email, which is great, and then nothing.
no
That's when
follow-up.
they're the most interested. These new donors, they're so hyped about your mission.
Yeah.
And then crickets, or they get an email a month later from you. So that's why I'm really passionate. I work with the very small teams on this, but go ahead, Trevor.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by everything you just said. So yeah, I'm really into it. Yeah. But honestly, from a for-profit perspective too, right? So, because these are the same things that for-profit companies, you're talking about list segmentation. I want you to tell the audience, if they don't know what that means. And then you just gave a great example of a brand new donor. Well, that's how we could segment a list. I also just think 30,000 foot view, that's your organization's equity. Frankly, you're not relying on any algorithm. Of course, you need to tell the story. Of course, you need to have a subject line and things of that nature that catch people's attention. But let's just talk about what your last point about, how it just kind of like it's very frustrating. Of course, we mean this in the best possible way, to have a new donor come on board and get a thank you email and then no follow-up. And what's funny is you said that you were even selling on the for-profit side at one point. And the greatest time to sell something is right after you sold something.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to put sales monikers on giving, right?
There's there's similarities. People are people.
100%. There you go. And it's the behavior involved, right? Yeah. So yeah, talk about that and like what you advise nonprofits when they get a new donor, and timelines and things like that. I want you to like, give away the exact equation that you use and things like that. But, or if you want to, you can, but you see what I'm saying? Like just like some examples of how you would go about that in a perfect scenario. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any secret equations, unfortunately. I wish I did. I would more money from this. So, but I mean, I'll be what like most of us, who are seeking answers get annoyed with. It depends, right? But when it comes to learning about your donor base, that's kind of the mindset you need, because I can sit up here and tell you, oh, this is what donors want, this is what they want, but I don't know your donor base as a nonprofit. And even when I work with my clients, I have to learn their donor base, and I default to trusting their view of their donors, right? So, for example, first I just want to say segmentation, for folks who aren't familiar, that's a fancy word for dividing your list into different groups, right? So that's like a fancy marketing term. So I'm glad you called that out, because I am guilty of using marketing lingo that is unnecessary. So segmentation, some of us know it, some of us don't. It's a fancy way of dividing folks into different specific audiences. For example, if they're a new donor, if they're someone who came through an event, those kind of things. And that can be as simple or as complicated as you want, because it depends on the size of your list. If you have a smaller list, that's a little simpler. If you have a very large list and an old list, I'm working with a client, they've been around for 54 years and they have a huge list, right? And they have a good amount of segmentation, but there's still more they could do if they wanted, right? So you could segment based on behavior, how they interact with your emails, the last time they gave, those sort of things. So like with a new donor, the reason I push this so much with small nonprofits is, like I said, they aren't bringing in folks into the story of what their nonprofit is doing and why they exist and what their mission is. And there's a number of reasons to do that, but one of those reasons is to keep folks on your list so that they can eventually give again, even if they're not ready to give right away, or if they're not ready to join your monthly donor program, which is really important too.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Monthly donor. I don't know if you're familiar with Dana Snyder. She just did the monthly giving summit, and she has great resources on monthly giving. She has like a mastermind. So shout out to Dana if you are looking to build or grow your monthly recurring donors. And email is a huge part of that.
It's such a massive opportunity. I've seen so many lovely success stories where
it's huge.
Oh, for $10 a month, and just the
the
how
long-term
easily you can quantify
predictability of your budget. Yeah. Like there's so many benefits to it. And that new donor welcome is a huge part of that, because if someone only gave once, that's a great opportunity to invite them to become a recurring donor, like having language about that program. Like if you want to get more involved, becoming a recurring donor, you can have like a cute name for it. There's so many cool things you can do with that. But ultimately with a new donor, they're the most excited. You want to keep them engaged on your list. Some of them are still going to unsubscribe because they're like, oh, I just gave this one time. But it's your chance to pull them in a way that is digestible, right? So something I'm like almost preachy about with email is like, stop doing so much with it. Like I'm constantly telling nonprofits, like, you're doing too much. Like I get these emails because I pay attention to a lot of small nonprofits, even ones who aren't clients. And I get these emails that are like so long. It's like an essay. And I'm like, what's going on? Why are we writing?
I just wrote down in my notes, brevity of message, because I wanted you to talk about that.
Yes. Oh, nice. Right? We're on the same page. So, Yeah,
and why that's so important.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's vital because, when we're an in-house, especially fundraisers, right? Like any nonprofit person, you're constantly in the work, like so absorbed with the day to day, and that is your job. That is not the donor's job to know everything you know. What you can do is share some and highlight the stories that are part of your work so that you can bring them into it, but in a way that, make it more fun. Like, even if you have a very serious mission, and, in some cases, if it's more serious, I'm not saying to like downplay that, but there are ways to celebrate your donors and keep them excited about the impact that they're making by giving to you. I think that's so huge. And then, like, your, brevity is key, right? So I think it's the stat is, I think it's like 90 seconds. I might be wrong about the exact number, but it's like a very short amount of time that folks take to scan an email. And so making sure your emails are skimmable is huge. Like, shorter paragraphs, write like a person, not like you're doing a dissertation or an essay. And a lot of us don't learn how to write that way, right? A lot of us are well educated in the nonprofit space, so we do these long essays and thesis. That's not it with email. Email is more akin to talking one on one. And I imagine when you talk one on one, like say you call a new donor to thank them, which I recommend, if especially small teams call those new donors to say the personal things. But if you call them, you're not going to be, reciting some like long paragraph of information. It's a
We're a 501c3 and yeah,
you're
exactly.
going to
Yeah, yeah.
be sharing like, oh, I'm so grateful, and this gift you gave really made a huge impact on this one program that we have, and
No, cool.
here's something, just sharing and asking for their feedback. And I push this with most of my clients, like, ask for replies. Like, and it's funny, Jess Campbell, I'm shouting out all my consultant friends. Jess Campbell is an amazing email marketer too. She works with nonprofits, and she just posted on LinkedIn about this, about how most folks aren't even like considering their replies in the nonprofit space. And I think the for-profit space is more familiar. It's being underutilized there too, but I think for a lot of small nonprofits, they're not realizing like even you being a small nonprofit is an advantage in email marketing, because you can like make that personal connection and ask folks to get involved.
Let me ask you this, like as a follow-up, Christy. It's like when you're a small nonprofit like that, which most nonprofits are actually small, right? I mean, like the average is like under three, paid staff, right? Or less, yeah. In some cases, even then, I think it's even more of an opportunity in giving yourself the permission to make it more personal as far as asking for feedback, right? Because it's like, oh, I mean, like the big aha, or like it's not the elephant in the room. It's like, hey, they gave the organization. They probably have a pretty good idea that you're small.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So adding that personal touch. What's funny, everything that you're talking about is interesting because we talk to a lot of nonprofits that are, there's a lot of nonprofits that are raising money for food insecurity in the same town, or dealing with homelessness, or at-risk youth, and all those things, and they're all lovely, right? And they constantly say, hey, that donor is given to that organization, that's what we do. And well, we talk about this all the time. You don't own your donors. They can give to multiple missions. They can give to missions that are doing the
Exactly.
same
And
exact thing
most
as a
do,
matter.
yeah.
And so we're constantly saying, or at least I'm saying, right, where it's like differentiation is stronger than competition. So what makes you different than that shop down the street? And then what's stronger than differentiation? Impact. And that message could simply be, just picking up the phone and asking, like you said, for feedback, or asking for the reply. When you're saying all these things, it sounds like to me, and I'm not big on labels, but it sounds like low hanging fruit, like the opportunity, right? Like the monthly recurring donation thing that we touched on, the reply, the feedback. This is like low hanging fruit opportunities to get folks involved and invested and invited to give their feedback. I just think that's just such a
And
massive
especially
piece of
for
this.
individual donors, right,
Yes,
who are
yes.
not able to give a huge amount immediately, but over time, the the value of what they can give is there,
The
right? And
lifetime value is huge. Yeah.
yeah, lifetime value is so huge. And I think too, like, so yes, we do not own our donors.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Say that
don't
again.
I think too, like, it's important that there's, and this is something, akin to the work I do, but something that's kind of my almost like side hustle. I do community centric fundraising work. I'm an organizer for the Los Angeles chapter. And so we talk a lot about collaboration too, right? Where there are other nonprofits who you can collaborate with. And I see this like even in email, there's a cool opportunity to collaborate where
Yes.
you can highlight your partners, right? A lot of nonprofits have some kind of partners. Are you sharing those partners with your donors? Like, do they even know about those partnerships? And I think that's a huge piece because depending on, your mission and values, I know most of the nonprofits I work with, their values are very focused on community centric fundraising. And so making sure your donors know about those values and know like this is another partner and this is another way we're making change, right? I feel like so I worked in sales at a tech company for a while and we were like huge on partnerships. And I remember like I came from the small nonprofit space. This was like a huge corporation. And so we were so into collaborating outside of our company that I realized I'm like, wow, like the nonprofit space, we do like little things here and there, but like especially small shops, if you can collaborate with other folks who do something adjacent to what you do, or even do the same thing but differently,
In the
that's
same
also
community, it's like,
yes,
yeah,
especially if you're in the same
yes.
local community doing similar work, please, please. And I think emails can help share that with your donor base. And I know me as a donor, I really value seeing that a nonprofit I'm giving to is also partnering to strengthen whatever that mission is. Because the more of us who are working together to, fight hunger, and homelessness, all these things, if we can be a part of that together, like that's huge. Because ultimately, I think we give to individual organizations, but we're also giving to like the overall big picture cause
The
when we
greater
do
good.
that. And so how can we also communicate that, right? And if you're not in the position where you have a lot of partners, work on that.
Go find one. Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
find a partner
Yeah.
and talk about that publicly in your emails. Share that with your donors. Like, this is a new partnership we're really excited about. Like, there's so much you can share, but share it in a digestible way.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up so many great points there. It's interesting. The collaborative, benefit, it's like 1 + 1 does not equal 2 typically. The synergy that you can create out of this. We constantly say more good people in our space is good for our space. So
Yes.
why wouldn't that be the same thing? And it's interesting. What is that about people? Is that our culture, our society that is afraid or has some kind of apprehension about like, I used to call it from being in the for-profit space this entire time, and we've helped, thousands of nonprofits, but we run a for-profit
Yeah.
company, and I always have had, but I was always a big believer in cross marketing. And I see
Mm-hmm.
the value in like, oh, your list, our list. Oh, geez, those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. And I just, what is it? What is it? Is it like, and when I say our culture, I mean our nonprofit culture. Is it just because we just don't understand, or these shops that you're talking about just don't understand that it's even a thing? When you bring these points up, I'm assuming they like you see the light bulb go off, and it's like an aha moment, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when you're
Absolutely.
introduced in these concepts. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, we don't have time to get into all my opinions about this.
No, but
But
they're
I
really good,
studied
Kristi. They're
business,
really
right?
good.
I
Yeah.
studied business, I studied marketing, and then I also studied political science in
Okay.
undergrad. And
Uh-huh.
so
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I
yeah.
have this like varied background, and I've mostly worked in the nonprofit space, right? And even when I worked at for profits, I was selling to nonprofits. So I know a ton about this. And the scarcity mindset is a really huge, huge reason we struggle with this in our industry. There's just, kind of this almost desperation that we're taught around asking for gifts. And that's why I'm so passionate about community centric fundraising, is because that's with the philosophy of like, our donors are our partners, not folks who we're begging for income from. They're folks who are partnering and in community with us. And how can we do that and cultivate that further? So I think we have a huge mindset of like, oh, there's not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough donors. And, you know, our economic system, like, that overvalues individualism, right? I think we all know that, and we've all experienced that, especially when we hit lockdown in 2020, right? Where we all were like freaking out, but we had to rely on each other. And so we were kind of forced into that. But I think with our system and how it is, and because there has been a decrease in overall giving lately, and folks read those headlines, we're in our head about it, and of course, like, I'm not like, I'm a little hippy dippy, but I'm also like a realist, where it's like, okay, but your mindset has to be that the right people are out there. And if you're doing meaningful work and you believe that, then it's just about finding the other folks who find that meaningful. And if someone has already given their hard earned money to you, there are a myriad of ways to partner with them and continue that work. And that's why email is so important, because you're going to see like even folks who aren't directly contacting you, you can see if they're opening emails, clicking through. I mean, there's some weird tech stuff going on with that right now, but
Yeah.
but generally you're going to know. And having those folks interact with you and continue to engage, and you share your story with them, that's only going to make a bigger, like, overall, like, ripple effect, right? If someone is committed to your cause and you ask them, hey, tell a friend about this, hey, post about us on Giving Tuesday, those kind of things will help expand your network and continue to find the right folks to support your mission. Of course, that's easier said than done, I
No, you got
understand,
to
but
put the work in. Yeah,
yeah,
for
exactly.
sure.
It's work for sure.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, email is not like what is it, a silver bullet of just having what you need, but it is a huge tool to connect with the right folks and continue to show your appreciation, and also continue to partner with them as donors. And the more you learn about them through that list, the better your messaging can be about your nonprofit. And I'm always like, keep it simple. Like, don't even use most of your lingo, because unless a donor works in a nonprofit like yours, they're not going to know a lot of our lingo.
I th- yeah, I think so many nonprofit professionals, they just like, they care so deeply about the work they're doing, and they just want to
Yeah, of
throw it all up on the
course.
page. And I
Yeah, and it's
understand.
important.
I've
Yeah.
been there. I've been there. Like, we got to tell them everything. And I always think of, there's this silly movie, or I don't know how silly it is. But anyway, there's this, a river runs through it. I watched it when I was a kid, right? And then the father is the pastor, and he's teaching the boy how to write, like a passage. He's homeschooled back in the early 1900s, and he keeps on telling him, once again, half as long. Once again, half as long. And I always remember, it's like, do it again, half as long, over. And it's never been so evident, you know what I mean, as it is right now, that the message just has to be succinct. It also gives you the opportunity to sell more than one, or excuse me, send more than one message. You're talking about segmentation and click-through rate and all these things, and we can send different tests, to see what, there's all sorts
Oh
of
yeah. I mean,
lovely ways
and
to go
a
about it.
lot of my clients just have to get into consistent email, because I work with those small shop folks who, there's no designated marketing person half the time.
Sure. Yeah, they don't have a CMO.
And
Yeah.
a lot of marketing folks don't understand email. Like, they're not email specialists in the nonprofit sector, right? They're like, oh, marketing, I make, social media posts, which is important too. But I think because they're small shops, they don't always understand how different email is, and brevity is key in email. That said, those longer form, like writing, like blog posts or even like long trainings or webinars that you might do as a nonprofit, like those have a lot of value. Just don't expect, like, don't put a blog post in your email, but you can link to a blog post. So if
Totally.
someone
Yeah.
is more interested, so there's
Yeah.
ways for folks to like dig in further, but understand that that's not going to be the majority of your donors, especially if they're giving small amounts, right? And it's a great opportunity to get further engagement with folks and then maybe chat with them about their giving potential, right? And funnel them into a major donor eventually.
Yeah. I had a curious question, because you're talking about just small shops. Most shops are small. Totally get that. Are you nudging them, encouraging them to utilize CRM technology to have their list? How often do you come across an organization where like we're just in Excel still and stuff like that? And is that what were you involved when you were on the for-profit side selling to nonprofits? Were you working with CRM technology and things like that?
Yeah,
My gut tells me you were, without even knowing your
I
resume.
was. I
Yeah. Okay.
worked
Cool.
at Salesforce, so like
Got it.
the
Yeah.
nonprofit CRM. I mean, there's a lot of competitors now, but I
For
feel
sure.
like they were the first to really market to that group in the tech space. So I worked there. So I do not work for them anymore, to be clear. Their
No, totally. Yeah.
marketing
Yeah.
tool is incredible. Most of the small shops don't need it yet. There are very few small nonprofits that are ready to take on a tool like Perdot or even need a tool like Perdot yet. Um, I think the biggest thing I see that I push for is consistency. So I use MailerLite for my list. I love MailerLite. It's a very simple tool, and they have. I was using the free account when I mean, I still have a small list myself. I'm a small business owner, but
Sure. Sure.
I was using their free plan for a while, and they had like free automation. So if someone doesn't have an email tool, I usually recommend MailerLite or
Mm-hmm.
just MailChimp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us are familiar with it, and it's a good tool also.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a little more complicated because bigger organizations use it. So they have some stuff I don't think small shops need. Um, that said, those are the ones I like. And if you have a CRM, one that integrates with it is really important. So I do push for that. Where my focus is being consistent with your emails and also simplifying your emails and storytelling in your emails. So because if you're, you can have a big fancy tool, and I've worked with folks who have like a HubSpot and it's set up and they have and I see they only send emails like every few months, or only when they have an event they send a lot of emails, or only during Giving Tuesday they send a lot of emails. And even when folks hear email fundraising, they automatically go to like that short-term campaign, which is important. But if you are not consistently in folks' inboxes, those campaigns are less effective because they might even forget they've given to you. They might forget that you're sending them emails and that
You're a,
they approved. You're
you're a
more likely to
refrigerator
get marked
magnet
as
at that point.
spam too. What?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I say you're a refrigerator magnet at that point. It's like, oh yeah, I
Yeah,
remember them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I kind of remember them, but I don't care. Whereas if you are consistently reaching out and providing like storytelling value, a lot of I like a nonprofit I'm working with now does a lot of community programs and education, right? So that's a big donor base. They also participate in events. So if you're not consistently sharing with that list of folks, and then you come along right before Giving Tuesday, or worse, just on Giving Tuesday, like first email they ever see from you is asking for more, please don't do that. So that's what I really push, is decide on the cadence of your regular updates, and the shorter the better. There are ways to have like a more comprehensive like monthly update that work for some donor bases. Most people it doesn't work well for. And I think if you format it correctly, it might work. But having like a monthly email is where I tell folks to start who don't have a list at all, because I have had some folks come to me and say, oh, I don't have a list at all, where do I start? And like, just start with like everyone you know, but ask them first if they want to be on the list. Ask any donors who have previously given if they want to be on your email list. Start there. And then use your social media connections to push more folks to that list as your organization grows. And then, monthly is not going to make a huge difference, though. There's just actually another shout out. I love other consultants. I do a lot of collab stuff. Caitlin is her name. I think that's how you say her last name. I realize I never asked her. But it's Ughn. I just did a LinkedIn Live with her recently. And we were talking about essentially, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you're talking about Caitlin and
so, oh, she just posted recently about you can't make a huge impact with email if you're not sending it at least once a week.
We could have this conversation for 90 minutes. There's no question. So we got to really good. I have all sorts of crazy ideas about how to get this message out about email marketing.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you love our podcast, click the download button, rate us, and follow us on social media at HGA Fundraising. Get out there, start fundraising, and raise more money. See you next time.